Chapter 40-50. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was very interested in the inheritance of the ruins, they had to consider the big picture. Apart from the three of them who had already broken through to the Starlight Realm, the others obviously felt a huge pressure. In comparison, they would rather not enter the ruins and have everyone be safe. After all, they were a team and no one was willing to see their teammates get injured because they were risking their lives. Di Baichen nodded, okay. Compared to the lives of Xiren and the others, the inheritance was not that important. Mo Yunjua did not speak. To him, this kind of thing was not within the scope of his consideration. In fact, he who grew up in the Heavenly Slaughter Tower did not have such emotions. The most important thing was his own interest. Giving up his own interest for the sake of everyone was undoubtedly an extremely stupid move to him. However, the only one he cared about was Bailey Hongzhuang. No matter what decision Bailey Hongzhuang made, he had no objections. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others make such a decision, Xiren and the others felt even more pressure in their hearts. No one would be willing to give up such a good opportunity. However, just because they were holding back, they had implicated Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to give up as well. They felt that they had let down Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. In the next moment, Shengguan Yingying and Wen Xiren could not help but look at each other, and then nodded affirmatively. Then the two of them displayed their strongest martial skills together. Bang! An astonishing wave spread out, causing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were fighting to turn their gazes away. Their eyes flashed with astonishment. They did not expect Wen Xiren and Shengguan Yingying to be able to burst out with such an attack. After the two of them displayed their joint martial skill, an incomparably tyrannical force appeared. Then the skeletons in the line in front of them turned into powder. Quick! Let's move forward, Xiren hurriedly said. Right now, the only thing they could do was to seize this opportunity and move forward quickly. After opening up a gap, they would quickly close in. Otherwise, if they were delayed, they would really have no strength left. Even though everyone was shocked by the might of Xiren and Wen Xinya's combined martial skill, they knew that now was not the time to be concerned about this point. Immediately, their figures flashed and they quickly rushed into the middle of the skeleton army. As they walked into the center, the pressure from the skeletons from all directions increased. Instantly, everyone formed a circle with their backs against each other and moved forward together. From the moment they chose to break into the encirclement, they already had no way out. Just as they were moving forward with all their might, a commotion suddenly came from ahead. Rumble. One of the walls of the hall where the skeleton army was located was suddenly opened. This scene was similar to what they had experienced before. Then, a conversation not far away entered their ears. I didn't expect that the mechanism to lead to the next place would actually be here. This is great. In my opinion, we must be the fastest team. The other cultivators' speed can't be compared to ours. Of course. Don't you know who's leading our team? Even the sect leader praised Senior Brother Li's comprehension. If it wasn't for Senior Brother Li leading us, I'm afraid we wouldn't know how long we would be trapped in that damned place. Chapter 40-51. Listening to their conversation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. They secretly guessed that this so-called Senior Brother Li couldn't be the Li Boyo they didn't want to see, right? If that was the case, it would be too much of a coincidence. As the door gradually opened, the appearance of the cultivator inside also appeared in the line of sight of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but feel their hearts skip a beat. It was really a small world. The person they didn't want to meet the most just happened to meet him. It can't be, right? How can it be so coincidental? We just wanted to avoid Li Boyo and this guy just happened to meet us. Shengguan Yingying looked helpless. It wasn't easy to deceive Li Boyo before. No one knew when this Li Boyo would figure everything out and come back to his senses. If this guy suddenly figured out how to deal with them, then it would be troublesome. The heavens don't do as we wish. The heavens really don't open their eyes. Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but sigh. Looking at Shengguan Yingying and Chu Jinfeng's helpless appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Actually, this is also expected. Li Boyo's strength is so tyrannical, it can be seen that his comprehension is also very high. Now, the cultivator teams that can break through here are all strong teams. It's normal for him to appear here. Usually, the comprehension of strong cultivators was not low. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for them to achieve such achievements at such a young age. Therefore, it was reasonable for Li Boyo to be able to comprehend it so quickly. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ren Ziheng and the others couldn't help but nod. There were only a few possibilities for the cultivators to appear here. As long as they were fast enough, it could be said that it was inevitable for them to meet Li Boyo and the others. But it's good that these guys appeared. It's too much pressure for us to deal with these skeletons alone. With them here, they can naturally share some of the pressure. In a way, this guy can be considered to have helped us a little. Di Baichen said with a faint smile. Li Buoyou obviously did not expect to meet Bailey Hongzhuang and the others here. Seeing them surprised him even more than seeing the group of skeletons. The faces of the cultivators who had said that Li Buoyou would be the first batch to arrive turned ugly to behold. They had wanted to flatter Li Buoyou. Unexpectedly, someone else had arrived before them. Their faces could not help but turn ugly to behold. Li Buoyou naturally thought of this as well. His expression revealed some embarrassment, and a layer of haze quietly covered his eyes. Previously, he did not pay much attention to Bailey Hongzhuang and her team. After all, this team was not large. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was quite famous, that was only in the field of medical skills. He had never paid much attention to her strength. However, such a small team that he had overlooked had actually arrived here faster than them. This was something that he found hard to accept. Isn't this Bailey Hongzhuang and others from Penglai Palace? I didn't expect to meet him again so soon. Why are there so many skeletons? They are completely surrounded by these skeletons. The cultivators in the team quickly focused their attention on these skeletons. After all, their main purpose now was to seize the inheritance in this ruin. The most important thing was to find the next place. Chapter 40-52. At the same time, Li Buoyou also sized up the situation in front of him. Since Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were able to arrive here earlier than them, it proved that they were true geniuses. Their comprehension was actually stronger than his. The other party would definitely not appear there for no reason. If they wanted to escape, they would definitely have a chance. Thinking of this, Li Buoyou carefully sized up his surroundings. With this observation, he suddenly realized that there was a passage behind the skeleton army. According to the position of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, it was obvious that they wanted to pass through the skeleton army and head to the passage. I see. Li Buoyou suddenly understood and could not help but sigh in his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were only 9 people. Facing the skeleton army of thousands, they actually had the courage to charge forward. Just this courage alone was amazing. If it was an ordinary team, they would probably have lost the confidence to continue fighting after seeing such a huge skeleton army. At this moment, Li Buoyou also changed his previous neglect of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. For them to be able to do this, it could be said that their courage was commendable. They were really not ordinary people. Perhaps his younger brother had really died in their hands because it was impossible for ordinary cultivators to kill Li Yunyu. Let's speed up and enter the passage as well. Li Buoyou's voice was loud and firm. He would rather kill the wrong person than let them go. Regardless of whether the people who killed Li Yunyu were Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, since someone had pointed out this point, it proved that it was possible. He wanted to avenge his younger brother and would not let go of any possibility. However, the most important thing now was not to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, but to obtain the inheritance of this ruin. As Li Buoyou's voice fell, the cultivators in his team nodded one after another. I'll take the lead in a while. You guys follow behind me. Don't get separated by the skeleton army. Otherwise there's nothing we can do. Li Buoyou reminded the people behind him. Under such circumstances, everyone could only move forward together. Once they were separated by the skeleton army, the others would not be able to rescue them in time. Senior brother Li, don't worry. We understand. The cultivators in the team revealed a look of understanding. Even though the skeleton army in front of them was very frightening, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others only had 9 people and dared to charge in. In comparison, their team had more than 20 people. Their combat power was much stronger than the other party. The next moment, Li Buoyou and the others also joined the battle. Sure enough, since Li Buoyou and the others appeared, the skeleton army split up to deal with them. As a result, the pressure on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others lessened significantly. After all, they had lost half of their opponents. Naturally, they no longer felt as oppressive as before. The timing of Li Buoyou's appearance is really timely. They've solved a big problem for us. A smile appeared on Xiren's face. Previously, the situation had forced him to force a smile. Now that the pressure had lessened, he felt much more at ease. Chapter 40-53. They were the first group to reach this place and they could not be overtaken by the other party. They had taken great pains to seize the initiative and they had to grasp it firmly in their own hands. After all, they had spent so much effort to reach this place. According to their judgment, the path ahead had always been a test. Perhaps there would be treasures behind them. If they were overtaken by the other party here, it would be too disappointing. Following Shengguan Yingying's words, everyone could not help but straighten their expressions. Junior sister Shengguan is right. We have to charge forward with all our might. Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded her delicate head and the sound of her guqin poured out. Vigorous yuan power was mixed in the sound of her guqin and formed a straight attack under her control. Bailey Hongzhuang's guqin opened the path and Di Beichen and Mo Yunjua's attacks followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang, widening the path once again. At the same time, Wen Ziren and the others were not slow at all. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two had opened the path, they rushed forward as fast as they could. Before the skeleton army came in full force again, they advanced as fast as they could. Although this method consumed a lot of yuan power, it was undeniable that their speed was not slow. Li Boyo and the others were also attacking with all their might. The power that the 20 over people exploded with was naturally very terrifying. Just like how they had been able to enter the ruins at the fastest speed, one could see how powerful their combat power was. Their speed was not slow at all. The skeleton army's numbers were extremely terrifying and their powers were extremely powerful. On a normal day they often went to the training grounds to train and understood these skeletons very well. Not only that, their combat power was the strongest in the Crimson Moon sect and they had worked together for a long time. Their tacit understanding was extremely high. They had originally thought that their speed would definitely surpass Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, they had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would advance at a speed that was not any slower than theirs. Instantly, their eyes were filled with a thick sense of astonishment. I did not expect that although the number of cultivators from Penglai Palace is small, their fighting style is very special. They are able to maintain this speed even when surrounded by so many skeletons. They are quite capable. Qian Feilong's eyes flashed with astonishment. As an expert of the Crimson Moon sect, his eyesight was naturally not bad. Recently, Bailey Hongzhuang was really in the limelight. He also knew that the sect had sent people to recruit her, but they were not successful. Because of this, he had always been very curious about Bailey Hongzhuang. He wanted to know what kind of person could actually make such a name for herself. After all, according to his understanding of the situation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had only been on Penglai Island for a year. In such a short time, they were able to directly become inner disciples of Penglai Palace and obtain the recruitment of the three major forces. This ability was really not something that ordinary people could have. Now that he saw them, he realized that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were also very strong. In comparison, he could not have reached this step at such a young age. It seems that we have underestimated them before. We have to go all out now. Otherwise, we might really let these people take the initiative. That would be terrible. Chapter 40-54. No matter what treasures there were, the cultivators who arrived first would definitely reap the most benefits. If they were late, the treasures would fall into someone else's hands. Let's speed up. We can't let these juniors see us as a joke, Li Boyo said calmly, but there was a hint of coldness in his tone. He had always been the most popular cultivator in the Crimson Moon sect. How could he let a few rising stars from the Penglai Palace steal his limelight? As Li Boyo's voice fell, Qian Feilong and the others couldn't help but shudder. They had been teammates with Li Boyo for so long, so they understood his temperament very well. Such a tone meant that he was starting to feel displeased. In the next moment, everyone sped up. Indeed, under such circumstances, if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were to steal the initiative, they would lose face if word got out. Immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others realized that Li Boyo and the others had completely unleashed their speed. Their speed could be said to be abnormally fast. Seeing this, they did not dare to delay. After all, whoever was the fastest would be able to steal the initiative. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Li Boyo's teams were competing, another wall suddenly opened. Hearing this familiar voice, the cultivators in Bailey Hongzhuang and Li Boyo's teams could not help but look at the opening door. They did not know which faction's cultivators had appeared this time. Could it be the cultivators from the 100 Flowers Gate? Shengguan Yingying could not help but wonder. Now that the teams from the Penglai Palace and the Crimson Moon sect had appeared, only the 100 Flowers Gate's team had yet to appear. Perhaps it was the 100 Flowers Gate's team that had appeared at this moment. I don't know. We'll know if we keep watching. I just hope it's not the Crimson Moon sect's team, Wen Ziren said. Li Boyo and the others had unleashed their speed very quickly. In comparison, they only had a slight advantage. If it was the Crimson Moon sect's team that appeared, then they would naturally be no match for them once the two teams worked together. At the same time, Li Boyo and the others were also secretly guessing the team that might appear. They only hoped that it was not the Penglai Palace's team. It would be better if it was the 100 Flowers Gate. This way the three factions would be able to combine forces. As the tightly shut door gradually opened, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also saw the cultivators inside. After seeing the familiar clothes, everyone's eyes could not help but light up. These are the clothes of the Penglai Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately noticed the other party's clothes. From this point alone she could tell which power the other party belonged to. Di Beichen and the others also had smiles on their faces. As long as it was the team of their Penglai Palace, then in the face of the Red Moon sect, they would be a whole. This was good news. Compared to the joy of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, the faces of Li Buoyou and the others had become ugly. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 9 people was not enough for them to worry about. Now that a team from Penglai Palace had appeared, they didn't know who they were. Could it be Wang Yinling and the others? Qin Feilong secretly guessed. Wang Yinling was the strongest cultivator in the Penglai Palace. Normally the competition between him and Li Buoyou was quite intense. In fact, their strength was about the same. However, the Penglai Palace's reputation was stronger than the Crimson Moon sect's. Therefore, Wang Yinling's reputation was more prominent. Chapter 40-55. Hearing Qin Feilong's guess, Li Buoyou's face turned cold. He had been competing with Wang Yinling for so many years. Although their strengths were similar and they had always been tied, Wang Yinling's reputation had always been better than his because he belonged to Penglai Palace. Regarding this point, it could be said that he was extremely unconvinced. Therefore he had always wanted to defeat Wang Yinling to prove that he was the strongest. At the same time he could also fight for Crimson Moon sect. However, every time his strength increased and he challenged Wang Yinling, he would find that Wang Yinling had also improved. From the beginning to the end, the two of them could not determine a winner. However, Wang Yinling's reputation was still higher than his. As the door was completely opened, the appearance of the cultivators in the team appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Ren Ziheng's eyes flashed with surprise. It's senior brother Wang Yin and the others. The faces of Di Beichen and the others also showed a light of understanding. Wang Yinling was the strongest person in their Penglai Palace. Ever since they joined Penglai Palace, they were not unfamiliar with the name Wang Yinling. As the strongest cultivator in Penglai Palace, he was naturally in the limelight. However, he spent most of his time in seclusion. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had not seen his true face. Therefore, they did not have much interaction with him. Wang Yinling clearly did not expect that there were 2 other teams that had arrived here before them. A surprised look appeared on his handsome face. However, it disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that it was hard to notice. I didn't expect it to be so lively here, Wang Yinling said slowly. A smile appeared on his lips. Your reputation as Penglai Palace's #1 master is undeserved. Your junior brothers and sisters are all faster than you. Li Buoyou said in a mocking tone. Hearing this, Wang Yinling did not care at all. There are talented people in every generation. Our Penglai Palace's outstanding disciples come in batches. I will be happier if they can surpass me. In comparison, your Crimson Moon sect has always needed you to shoulder the burden. You can imagine the difference between the two. Li Buoyou originally wanted to take this opportunity to mock Wang Yinling. He didn't expect Wang Yinling to turn the tables on him. He couldn't think of a rebuttal for a while. His face instantly turned ugly. Wang Yinling, don't talk nonsense. Recently, your limelight in Penglai Palace has been completely stolen by these newcomers. No matter how you pretend, it is useless. Wang Yinling chuckled. Li Buoyou, I am not as narrow-minded as you. I am very happy that the Penglai Palace has a new excellent practitioner. I will not have the slightest intention of suppressing them. If they can really surpass me and become the #1 master of Penglai Palace, I will be convinced. But you have always boasted that you are the most outstanding young master. How come I heard that your brother was killed a few days ago? You can't even protect your own younger brother. This doesn't seem to match the title you emphasized, does it? Hearing Wang Yinling's words, Li Buoyou's eyes became gloomy. He immediately lowered his voice and said, Wang Yinling, I heard that my brother died at the hands of your Penglai Palace disciples. Chapter 40-56. Listening to Wang Yinling's casual and even sarcastic words, Li Buoyou's eyes suddenly burned with anger. Li Yunyu was his younger brother, and their relationship was usually very good. Now that Li Yunyu had been killed, although he didn't know who did it, since they dared to kill Li Buoyou's younger brother, then they were going against him. Once he caught the murderer, he would make them pay a heavy price. What nonsense are you talking about? Li Buoyou glared at him. Maybe some despicable person attacked my younger brother when I wasn't paying attention, intending to injure me. Hearing Li Boyo's words, Wang Yanling said nonchalantly, Li Boyo, you don't need to test me here. If I wanted to kill your brother, I could have done it openly. Why would I need to hide? Even if it wasn't you, it was someone from Penglai Palace. Li Boyo's eyebrows were cold. Although he hated Wang Yanling, he also knew his character. If it was really him, Wang Yanling would admit it frankly because they both saw each other as a thorn in their side. If they could make each other unhappy, they were always very happy. Looking at Li Boyo and Wang Yanling's tit-for-tat appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and others couldn't help but look at each other. Originally, they thought that meeting Li Boyo was a big trouble for them. They didn't expect that after Wang Yanling appeared, it would become a tit-for-tat between Li Boyo and Wang Yanling. It seemed that they had nothing to do with it. This was really beyond their expectations. At this time, Ren Ziheng, who knew some inside information, couldn't help but say, Senior brother Wang Yan and Li Boyo have always been in a competitive relationship. When they meet each other, they usually compete like this. But until now, no one can do anything to the other. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. They are evenly matched? According to her judgment, Wang Yanling, as the top master of Penglai Palace, should be stronger than Li Boyo. Ren Ziheng nodded. It used to be like this. But senior brother Wang Yan's reputation is better than Li Boyo's because senior brother Wang Yan Han was also the top master of Penglai Palace. His fame was unique. Wang Yan Han. Ao Ling Xiao was a little surprised. Why haven't I heard of him? Brother Wang Yan went out 3 years ago and never came back. We don't know where he went, but we heard that he went out to train and won't be back for a while. Ren Ziheng also had a puzzled look on his face. Many disciples of the Penglai Palace were extremely curious about Wang Yan Han's whereabouts. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. They already had some guesses in their hearts. Come to think of it, the place Wang Yan Han went to should be the upper realm. Because Ren Ziheng had yet to break through to the Starlight Realm, he wasn't very clear about this situation. However, Wang Yanling and Li Boyo both knew about this matter. So that's how it is, Di Beichen said. Senior brother Wang Yan Han is also a genius. In the past, when senior brother Wang Yan Han was still around, there were many female disciples from the 100 Flowers Gate and Crimson Moon sect who admired him. Unfortunately, there was no news of him after that. Ren Zimei could not help but say. Chapter 4057. Following Ren Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes lit up. If Wang Yanling could defeat Li Boyo, it would be a good thing. The battle between Li Boyo and Wang Yanling only lasted for a short time. Everyone put all their attention on dealing with the skeleton army. Even though there were already 3 teams, the skeleton army's combat power could not be underestimated. If they were not careful, they might lose their lives here. Junior sister Bailey, if you can't hold on, you can come closer to us. We can help you. Wang Yanling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although he had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang before, he had heard many descriptions and stories about Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, he could recognize Bailey Hongzhuang even though it was his first time seeing her. Moreover, it was said that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were all very good-looking. He thought that there would be no other team that could make him feel unfamiliar with such an outstanding team. Thank you, senior brother Wang Yan, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Now, among the 3 teams, Bailey Hongzhuang's team was the closest to the exit. Wang Yanling and the others had just arrived, so their progress was naturally the slowest. If they waited for Wang Yanling and the others to help, their speed would undoubtedly be slower than Li Boyo. This was not a situation that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others wanted to see. Therefore, everyone still burst forth with full speed and quickly moved forward. The originally huge pressure had been reduced a lot after the 3 teams shared it. Previously, everyone only felt that it was difficult to move forward. Now that they were careful, they could still move forward. Wang Yanling and Li Boyo's teams burst forth with their fastest speed. The 2 teams were originally in a competitive relationship. No matter where they were, they would compete. Therefore, this was also the place where they competed. Whoever was faster would be the winner. Just as the 3 teams were moving forward at full speed, a new team appeared. After the other team appeared, they realized that they were cultivators from the 100 Flowers Gate. The cultivators of the 100 Flowers Gate clearly did not expect 3 groups to arrive first. Surprise appeared on their faces, but it did not last long before it was diverted by the Black Skeleton Army. Why are there so many skeletons? The power of darkness is what nourishes the skeletons. This situation is within our expectations. You should be more careful. Wang Yanling smiled faintly as he looked at the cultivators of the 100 Flower Gate. Compared to the constant competition between the Crimson Moon sect and the Penglai Palace, their relationship with the Hundred Flower Gate was much friendlier. After all, the Hundred Flower Gate mainly focused on medicine and alchemy. Although they also focused on increasing their strength, they could not compare to the Penglai Palace and the Crimson Moon sect. Thank you for your reminder, Brother Wanyan. The cultivators of the Hundred Flowers Gate immediately joined the group. Although they were usually weaker than the Penglai Palace and the Crimson Moon sect in terms of cultivation, no one was willing to give up on the legacy of the ruins. As a result, they had to take the risk. After all, once he obtained the inheritance, he would no longer be the same as before. Chapter 40-58. The other teams had at least 20 people. In comparison, their team only had 9 people, not even half of the other teams. What's more, the other teams were the top teams of the 3 major forces. Their teammates' combat power was also extremely strong, but they were much weaker. Fortunately, because they came the least, they still had a certain advantage. However, once the other team caught up, it would be very difficult for them to snatch the treasures and inheritance from the other teams with their strength. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other with a heavy heart. Now they didn't have time to waste. They had to finish everything as soon as possible. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music rang out crazily, and invisible sound waves spread out. The skeletons in front of her all fell down or turned into nothingness after being attacked by the sound waves. Di Baichen and Mo Yunjua also unleashed their combat power to the best. Not only did it not affect the ruins, but the effect was also excellent. Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were not willing to be left behind. Long before, the two of them had already begun to practice the combination martial arts. It was just that the combination martial arts were far more difficult to practice than ordinary martial arts because it required an extremely high degree of tacit understanding between the two people. Once there was a slight problem with one person, it would lead to the failure of the martial arts. It was precisely because of this that for so long, they had not performed this martial arts in front of others. However, after the two of them successfully performed this martial arts just now, the two of them also had a little more confidence. Under such a situation of full eruption, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' speed was not slower than Li Boyo and the others. Seeing this scene, the other 3 teams couldn't help but be surprised. Speaking of which, they didn't find it strange that the 3 teams appeared here, but the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang's team was a bit abrupt. The most important thing was that the team with the least number of people and the weakest strength was now at the forefront. Brother Wanyan, who is that in your Penglai Palace? I didn't expect your Penglai Palace to have such a powerful rising star. Bai Yingtian of the Hundred Flowers Gate couldn't help but ask. Hearing this, Wanyan Ling chuckled as he fought. Believe me if I say their names, you will realize that you must have heard of them before. Bai Yingtian was slightly stunned and looked at Wanyan Ling in surprise. Oh? Could it be that they are very famous? Bailey Hongzhuang. You should have heard of her. Wanyan Ling chuckled. She is now the pride of our Penglai Palace. With Wanyan Ling's words, the cultivators of the Hundred Flowers Gate all showed great shock. Bailey Hongzhuang. Bai Yingtian couldn't help but look in the direction of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Is that the one who developed the drug to suppress dark energy, Bailey Hongzhuang? That's right. Wanyan Ling nodded. That's her. I have long heard of Bailey Hongzhuang's name, but I have never seen her face. I didn't expect her to be such a beauty and so powerful. It was really surprising. Bai Yingtian couldn't help but sigh. He only thought that Wanyan Ling was dedicated to studying medicine, but he didn't expect that Wanyan Ling was also not lagging behind in cultivation, which was beyond his expectations. Chapter 40-59. Currently, Bailey Hongzhuang's team was extremely famous among the 3 major sections. However, other than the disciples of Penglai Palace, the Hundred Flowers Gate and Crimson Moon sect had only heard of her name but did not know what she looked like. The disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate were extremely curious about this genius doctor. They had long heard that she was very young, but when they saw her in person, they could not help but be shocked. This was because she was really too young. When they talked about her, Bailey Hongzhuang also gave them a polite smile. However, all her attention was still on dealing with these skeletons. The 4 teams all pushed their speed to the limit. Bailey Hongzhuang's team was the weakest, but they attacked in a straight line, so their speed was not slow. Only the sound of weapons clashing could be heard in the entire hall. Because there were too few people, Bailey Hongzhuang's team was left with wounds. Among them, Renzime, Shangguan Yingying, and the others were the most seriously injured because it was too difficult for them to deal with all this with their cultivation. Fresh blood dripped onto the ground, but the skeletons became even more excited and their attacks became even more violent. Under such circumstances, the other teams were faintly showing signs of surpassing them. Roar! White Lion let out a loud roar and pounced forward with its huge body, attacking the skeletons' lower bodies. At the same time, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's bodies became bigger and bigger under everyone's shocked gazes. Seeing this scene, not to mention Li Boyo and the others, even Ren Ziheng and the others revealed astonished expressions. They had been teammates with Bailey Hongzhuang for such a long time, but they did not know that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had such terrifying abilities. After becoming bigger, Xiao He and Xiao Bai could be said to be extremely strong. With a sweep of their hands, they cleared out the skeletons in front of them. Di Baichen's mystical fire demon rock spread its wings and flew into the air with Shangguan Yingying on its back. The ruins prohibited flying. Cultivators could not float in the air, but the mystical fire demon rock could. Shangguan Yingying had obviously suffered heavy injuries. If she continued to stay here, it would be difficult for everyone to take care of her. It would be best if the mystical fire demon rock could bring Shangguan Yingying to the other side of the passage. Xiren's berserk earth-shaking tiger also showed itself. It and White Lion stood on both sides of the team. Although it hadn't been growing for a long time, with Master Long's help, the berserk earth-shaking tiger was no longer a child. It had reached adulthood. His majestic appearance was very domineering. With a tiger pounce, he directly pounced on a group of skeletons. Shangguan Yingying's deep-sea demonic flood dragon wasn't inferior either. They weren't on the surface of the sea, so its fighting power couldn't be maximized. However, the divine dragon's tail whip was still quite powerful. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could be said to be getting faster and faster, and the distance that was gradually being pulled apart once again. Seeing this scene, the cultivators of the other three teams could not help but frown. The experts of the three major forces were all here, but the limelight was snatched away by the younger generation. They really felt a little embarrassed. The mystical fire demon rock did not disappoint everyone's expectations. It successfully brought Shangguan Yingying to the other side of the passage. Chapter 40-60. Hongzhuang, these skeletons won't attack from behind. You guys come over quickly. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but reveal a joyful expression. Originally, they were worried that these skeletons would turn around and attack Shangguan Yingying. They didn't expect that their worry was unnecessary. This way they would be able to escape even faster. Little Xin, you've really done a good job. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled as she looked at the mysterious fire devil rock flying back. She patted the little guy's head, although this little guy's body wasn't small. Little Xin obviously liked being praised. It immediately raised its head and flapped its wings. Its flying ability was very powerful. Immediately after, Ren Zimei was also brought to the passage by the mysterious fire devil rock. Li Boyo and the others didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's team to think of such a method. Using contracted beasts to fly directly over, it was much more convenient than charging through from below. Unfortunately, there were very few flying contracted beasts, and even fewer outstanding ones. Therefore, their team didn't have a powerful flying beast like the mysterious fire devil rock. I didn't expect this small team's foundation to be so strong. Not to mention so many contracted beasts opening the way, even the mysterious fire devil rock came out. This kind of momentum is a little shocking. The mysterious fire devil rock is a first-class contracted beast. Normally, it's extremely difficult to obtain such a contracted beast. I didn't expect this kid to have one. Not to mention the mysterious fire devil rock, the violent earth-splitting tiger and the deep-sea demonic flood dragon aren't easy to obtain. As for the two contracted beasts that can change their sizes, they're even more amazing. That white lion also looks extremely majestic. I can't even tell what species it is. No wonder this small team could make it here. Their ability is not simple. Li Boyo, Bai Yingtian and the others couldn't help but whisper. They were the strongest team in the Crimson Moon sect and the 100-Flower Gate, but in terms of wealth, they couldn't compare to Bailey Hongzhuang's team. Just like this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others passed through the skeleton army's obstruction one by one and arrived at the entrance of the passage. After escaping danger, everyone could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Although the length of this hall wasn't very long, it was still difficult to walk from there to here. In just a short period of time, everyone's clothes were soaked in sweat and blood, and their injuries were not light. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and her team disappeared from the sight of the other three teams. Seeing them enter the hall at the back like this, Li Boyo and the rest were a little anxious. If the treasures were at the back, wouldn't they all be taken by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest? Senior brother Li, they went there before us. What should we do? Li Buyo's face darkened. Let them go first. If they manage to snatch the treasure, we'll snatch it from them. If Li Buyo didn't have the intention to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others before, then he really wanted to kill them now. It was obvious that these fellows were rich. If he killed them, he would definitely gain a lot. What's more, he was also very dissatisfied with how these juniors had stolen the limelight. Chapter 4061. Hearing Li Buyo's words, the cultivators in the team all calmed down. Although the other party had many trump cards, if they were determined to deal with them, the other party would definitely not be a match for them. Since that was the case, they would let Bailey Hongzhuang and the others be complacent for a while. They would treat it as free labor to help them search for treasures. After that, they would wipe out Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in one fell swoop. Wang Yinling could not help but glance at Li Buyo. Although he could not hear what they were talking about, he could tell from the latter's expression that it was definitely not a good thing. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had broken through the Great Hall of Skeletons, they continued to move forward. The path in front of them was still pitch black. With the illumination of the night pearls, everyone could see the path under their feet clearly. The group did not move quickly because no one knew if they would encounter unknown dangers next. From the moment they entered the ruins until now, they had not seen any treasures at all. They had only experienced a few unnecessary dangers. After Bailey Hongzhuang fed Shangguan Yingying a pill, she asked aloud, "Yingying, how do you feel?" Shangguan Yingying nodded, "Don't worry. Although I've suffered some injuries, most of them are superficial. It won't affect me." "That's good." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the others. "Let's spread the healing medicine on your wounds first. The dark energy here is very strong. If we don't disperse it as soon as possible, it will cause a great impact." Everyone nodded. Healing their wounds was indeed very important. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel a little relieved. Fortunately, she had already developed a medicine to deal with the dark energy. Otherwise, the injuries they had suffered in the ruins would have greatly affected them. The group continued to move forward. The dark path seemed to have no end and no hope. In my opinion, Li Buyo and the others won't be able to catch up to us for a while. However, we don't know where the inheritance is. If we can't find it and the other party catches up to us, we'll be helpless. Xiren's face was filled with sorrow. He could not help but feel anxious because they had not found anything. "Let's do our best." Di Baichen patted Xiren's shoulder. If there was no one chasing after them, it would have been fine. However, there was someone following closely behind them. Everyone felt an indescribable sense of urgency. Mo Yunjue chimed in, "Although time is very important, what's more important is one's own perception and luck. If you don't have such comprehension ability and luck, it will be useless no matter how early you go. There's no need to be too anxious." Hearing this, Xiren nodded, "I hope so." His warm words were still filled with helplessness and worry. After all, their team's combat power was still a little weak. It was obvious that Li Buyo was not a good person. He was afraid that he would encounter a lot of trouble. Moreover, although Wang Yinling was their senior brother, no one knew if he would help them in this kind of place. "Don't think too much. Look, there's a stone room." Bailey Hongzhuang pointed at a stone room not far away. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's eyes lit up. After walking for so long, they finally saw the stone room. Chapter 4062. In the next moment, Di Baichen pushed open the door of the stone room. There was no mechanism in the stone room. It was just a simple push and the door opened. However, when everyone saw the situation inside, they couldn't help but widen their eyes and gasp. This is too extravagant, isn't it?" Chu Jinfeng looked at the scene in front of him in a daze. He had heard that there were many treasures in the ruins, but he didn't expect it to be so rich. Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei were also shocked by the scene in front of them. Looking around, the room was filled with treasures and spiritual stones. The scene was really shocking. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were calmer. They had seen many treasures in the ruins before, but the scene in front of them was obviously more spectacular than they had imagined. Although Ao Lingxiao was a little surprised, he wasn't too shocked. After all, he came from the upper realm and knew about this kind of thing. Many owners of the ruins would leave their treasures in the ruins. As a result, the inheritor's wealth would increase greatly. The owner of the ruins had mastered the power of darkness. His achievements must have been very shocking, so it was normal for him to have such wealth. These spiritual stones seem to be different from the ones we usually use. Di Baichen looked at the pile of spiritual stones in front of him and felt that the spiritual energy in them was much richer than the ones they usually used. Hearing this, Ao Lingxiao explained, "We usually use low-grade spiritual stones, but these spiritual stones in front of you are middle-grade spiritual stones. Compared to low-grade spiritual stones, the spiritual energy in them is much more abundant. The value is also much higher than low-grade spiritual stones." I see. Di Baichen's face showed that he understood. Although there was only a difference between middle-grade and low-grade spiritual stones, the difference in spiritual energy was huge. A middle-grade spiritual stone like this would be enough for them to cultivate for a few days. Moreover, the spiritual energy in it was much purer. Ao Lingxiao, I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable. Ren Zimei looked at Ao Lingxiao in surprise. Previously, she had only heard that Ao Lingxiao was unrestrained and had an extremely strange character. Now that they were teammates, her previous impression of him gradually weakened. Most importantly, they didn't expect that Ao Lingxiao, an Outer Palace disciple, would know about it. I just happened to hear about it. Ao Lingxiao smiled faintly and casually glossed over this matter. There are so many treasures here, let's put them away first. Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but say, we don't know when Li Boyo and the others will catch up. When they come, we won't be able to make it in time. These treasures were extremely precious to cultivators. Needless to say, gold, silver, and other treasures, the most important thing was these mid-grade spirit stones, which were very helpful to them. That's right, we have to hurry, Ren Zimei said. Just as everyone was about to put away the treasures, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice suddenly rang out. Wait, don't touch it. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone could not help but be stunned. Their faces flashed with thick astonishment. Hongzhuang, what's wrong? Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but ask. Chapter 4063. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang say that there was something wrong with these treasures, no one dared to touch them again. They all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, not knowing what the problem was. Wife, what did you find? Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. They could not see anything wrong with these treasures with their naked eyes. He wondered what Bailey Hongzhuang had found. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a thoughtful look. She carefully sniffed the spirit stones and said, "These treasures seem to be poisoned." Hearing this, everyone could not help but widen their eyes. Poisoned? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Although the smell is very faint, I can still feel it. Furthermore, I can only determine the composition of a part of this poison. I have not come into contact with the other part, but it seems to be related to the power of darkness. Then what should we do? Can't we touch these things? Chu Jingfeng's eyes flashed with anxiety. It was not easy to see so many treasures, but they could not take them. This was too depressing. Mountains of gold and silver were right in front of them, but they could not take them away. Anyone who saw such a scene would be very depressing. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, to be on the safe side, we should not touch them. Otherwise, if we are poisoned, it would be terrible. Hongzhuang is right. Treasures are not as important as life. Di Baichen also said, since we can't take these treasures, let's not delay and continue on our way. Hearing this, although everyone was somewhat unwilling, they could only agree. Although treasures were good, they still needed to be alive to enjoy them. Before leaving, Di Baichen closed the door of the stone room again. The team behind us will definitely go in to take a look after seeing this stone room. This will buy us some time. If the people behind us do not discover the abnormality of these treasures, they will not be able to escape the fate of being poisoned. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. She also felt very helpless about the way the owner of this ruin did things. Could it be that this ruin was just for everyone to gain experience and all the treasures here were just for them to look at? I don't know what the owner of this ruin was thinking, to actually choose to poison these treasures. If it weren't for Hongzhuang, I'm afraid we would have all been poisoned. Xiren could not help but exclaim. Originally, after passing 2 levels, he had thought that he would finally be able to reap some rewards. He did not expect that it would be a trap. This was really depressing. Zai, the character of someone who grasps the power of darkness, is also very strange. If it were an ordinary owner of a ruin, he would probably not do something like this. Ao Lingxiao shrugged. It seems that cultivators who have grasped the power of darkness have very strange personalities. The inheritance they left behind is not to nurture young people, but to send them to their deaths. As Ao Lingxiao's voice faded, everyone's expression changed. If that was really the case, then it would be terrible. I hope it's just that the owner of this ruin likes to test everyone, and it's not what you said. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but say. According to Ao Lingxiao's words, this ruin was a little scary. As everyone continued to move forward, suddenly, a huge door appeared in front of everyone. The black door had a golden totem drawn on it. At a glance, it gave people a feeling of shock. Chapter 4064. This door looks extraordinary. Could the inheritance be here? Mo Yunjue stared at the door in front of him. The surrounding decorations seemed to exude a sense of nobility. Compared to the hall they had seen before, this place in front of them was obviously more important. Everyone could not help but look at each other, secretly guessing in their hearts. If that was really the case, then it would be great. Let's go in and take a look. Di Beichen spoke out. Everyone nodded and immediately reached out to push the door open. However, after everyone pushed, they realized that the door could not be pushed open at all. Why can't this door be pushed open? Everyone looked at each other. They really did not expect to encounter such a situation. Looks like there's an 80 to 90% chance that there's a treasure behind this door. Xiren's eyes lit up. The door of the stone room was pushed open so easily before, but the thing inside was poisonous and could not be taken away. Now that this door can't be opened, the thing inside must be real. Hearing Xiren's words, everyone could not help but chuckle. If it is really as you say, then it will be great. Ever since they came here, they had been adventuring but had not gained anything. Now they could only hope to gain something. Everyone stood in front of the door, thinking about how to enter. Thinking about it, since even they could not open this door, it could not be opened by force. There must be a trick to it. Thinking of this, everyone carefully looked around the door. Now they could be considered to have some experience. Along the way they had been looking for mechanisms. Presumably this time would be no exception. I don't know what kind of mechanism it is this time. The owner of this ruin really likes to test people. Shengguan Yingying sighed. She originally thought that she was quite smart, but ever since she came here she felt that her brain was not enough. Along the way, other than the most obvious mechanism that she saw in the hall, she really did not understand anything else that needed to be understood. Perhaps the owner of this ruin values comprehension very much. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She also felt that the personality of the owner of this ruin was very strange. However, there were all kinds of people. Perhaps it was because of the many obstacles that this inheritance was so amazing. Perhaps the inheritance of the power of darkness places a high value on comprehension, which is why he arranged it this way, Di Beichen said. Shengguan Yingying spread out her hands. Just from this situation, I know that this inheritance has nothing to do with me. She finally understood that if the owner of this ruin valued perception so much, then she basically had no chance at all. I only hope that there are some treasures inside. That way I can at least gain something. Looking at Shengguan Yingying's expression, which seemed like she had already seen through everything, everyone felt a little funny. Perhaps this kind of attitude was better. Yingying, that might not be the case. Maybe the owner of the ruins appreciates your open-minded attitude, so he directly passed the inheritance to you. When Xiren smiled and joked. Anything is possible. Haha, it would be great if what you said was true. When I become stronger, I will protect you. Shengguan Yingying raised her eyebrows and laughed. Chapter 4065. Facing the black and gold door in front of them, the group first looked around carefully to see if there were any traps. However, even after they searched the entire area, they found that there were no traps at all. Seeing this, the group could not help but frown. If there were no traps around, then the situation would be a little complicated. If there are no traps around, then how are we going to get in? Ren Zime could not help but ask. The situation in front of them was really confusing. After Mo Yunjue carefully looked around, his gaze finally fixed on the black door. Maybe the solution lies on this door. This door? Chu Jinfeng was secretly surprised. Aside from looking a little better, there's nothing different about this door. The pattern on this door is the problem that needs to be solved. Di Beichen stared at the black door in front of him, the corners of his lips slowly curling up. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. I didn't expect this to be a puzzle. What do you mean? Shengguan Yingying could not help but ask Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Until now, she had not discovered what was different about this black door. How did Di Beichen and the rest know how to solve it? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and explained, Yingying, use your mental strength to touch this black door and you'll find out. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the group tried to use their mental strength to touch the golden door. Sure enough, as soon as they touched it, a huge jigsaw puzzle appeared in front of them. The pattern on this puzzle was very similar to the pattern on the black folding door in front of them, but it was much bigger. It would not be easy to put this puzzle together. It seems that we can only enter this door after we put this puzzle together. When Xiren couldn't help but sigh. With such a large jigsaw puzzle and such a dark pattern, it really wasn't an easy task to piece it together. Moreover, looking at this number, one could tell that it would take a very long time to piece them together. Perhaps before they could piece them together, the cultivators behind them would have already caught up. "Do your best," Debachin said. For a moment, everyone sat in front of the door trying to piece the puzzle together. In order to complete this puzzle, not only did it require sufficient time, it also required a great deal of patience. Otherwise, if he was anxious, it would be even more difficult to complete it. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang's group was trying to crack the door, the three teams of Li Boyo, Wan Yinling, and Bai Yingtian also passed through the skeleton hall and came to the back. Among the three teams, Li Boyo's team was the first to come out. After all, they were originally in second place and had a certain advantage. Although Wan Yinling's team was slightly slower, they didn't fall behind by much. In comparison, Bai Yingtian's team was the slowest. After all, not only were they the last to arrive, but their combat strength was also slightly weaker, so they were the last to arrive. Chapter 4066. Li Boyo and the others continued forward until they reached the first stone chamber. Only then did they stop. Looking at the closed door of the stone chamber, Li Boyo pushed it open with one hand. When everyone saw the current situation, their faces couldn't help but flash with a thick sense of shock. "Wow!" Almost everyone could not help but exclaim. "So many treasures, it's really amazing." Everyone only felt an indescribable sense of luck rushing to the top of their heads. Such a scene was usually only seen in their dreams. In the next moment, everyone rushed towards the treasures, only wanting to put all the treasures into their own Chengkuan bags. However, after seeing this scene, Li Boyo could not help but be puzzled. There are so many treasures here, why didn't Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest take them? Such treasures, as long as one was human, would definitely be tempted. Since Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were in front of them, there was naturally no reason for them not to take them. Hearing Li Boyo's words, everyone was a little puzzled. This was really something that they couldn't understand. Perhaps they were too anxious when they left, so they did not notice that there was a stone chamber here? Li Boyo frowned slightly. Although this stone chamber is not particularly obvious, it shouldn't be overlooked so easily, right? The door of this stone chamber is tightly shut. Perhaps they left in too much of a hurry so they overlooked it. Impossible. Li Boyo shook his head. One person might have overlooked it, but how could the entire team have overlooked this place? Something must be wrong. Thinking of this, Li Boyo could not help but move closer to the treasures to feel carefully, but he did not find anything. These were all real treasures and there was nothing strange about them. Why would the other party neglect this place? Could it be that they feel that although these things are precious, they are all external objects? In addition, we are all chasing after them and they want to obtain the inheritance in the ruins, so they chose to give up on these things? Another cultivator could not help but say. As everyone knew, there were always many treasures in ruins, but the most precious treasure was the inheritance of the ruins' owner. This is the only explanation that has some possibility. Li Boyo thought for a while, but he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If that was really the case, then the thinking of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other youngsters was truly terrifying. With so much wealth in front of them, they actually chose not to take it. This was not something an ordinary person could do. At the same time, it also proved their determination to inherit this legacy. Seniorly, that must be the case. Let's quickly put away these treasures. Otherwise it will be too late once Wan Yinling and the others catch up. Hearing this, Li Boyo looked at the treasures in front of him with mixed feelings. Vaguely, he felt that there must be a problem, but he couldn't figure out what the problem was. Leave some people here to store the treasures. The rest of you follow me to chase after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. We can't let them take the inheritance. Li Boyo said. If the inheritance was snatched away by Wan Yinling, he might be able to accept it. However, if it was snatched away by a few juniors, he really couldn't accept it. Chapter 4067. He had to kill these fellows as soon as possible. He could not allow them to have the chance to grow. As Li Boyo's voice fell, a portion of the cultivators immediately followed him and left. The remaining cultivators were immersed in the treasures. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to piece together the huge jigsaw puzzle in front of her. She had to admit that such a large number would make one feel dizzy. However, she also understood that this was the most important test for the owner of the ruins. The jigsaw puzzle in front of her not only tested her patience but also her comprehension. It was impossible to tell what the jigsaw puzzle was just by looking at it. However, after studying it carefully, one would realize that there were some faint connections between the jigsaw puzzles. Therefore, she had to grasp these connections and connect them together before piecing them together. In the end, it all depended on one's intuition because no one knew what the jigsaw puzzle would look like in the end. When Li Buoyo and the rest arrived, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest sitting in front of the door. They looked like they were in deep meditation. Seeing this scene, Li Buoyo's eyes suddenly lit up. This was a great opportunity. It was illegal to not obtain the blessings. Everyone was in a state of meditation. If he took advantage of this opportunity to attack, the other party would not even have a chance to refute. In the next moment, Li Buoyo immediately took out his weapon and waved it at Di Baichen without hesitation. Wang Yanling led some cultivators and quickly chased after them. When he saw that Li Buoyo was about to attack Di Baichen, he was still some distance away. He immediately shouted, "Li Buoyo, stop!" However, after hearing Wang Yanling's words, Li Buoyo did not stop. On the contrary, he sped up. Not only him but the other cultivators from the Crimson Moon sect also began to attack. This was the best opportunity for them. They definitely could not miss it. Wang Yanling's face turned gloomy. As fellow disciples, he did not wish for Di Baichen and the rest to die just like that. He could not help but sigh in his heart. Di Baichen and the rest were too careless. They actually dared to enter a state of meditation at this time. If they were not careful, they would lose their lives. The sharp sword was getting closer and closer to Di Baichen. The smile on Li Buoyo's face gradually widened. However, just as it was about to stab Di Baichen, Li Buoyo suddenly felt a huge force attacking him. Then his entire body flew out and fell to the ground. Li Buoyo was not the only one. The other cultivators from the Crimson Moon sect were in the same situation. The disciples of the Penglai Palace who finally arrived at the back couldn't help but smile after seeing this scene. Li Buoyo quickly stood up and looked angrily at Bailey Hongzhuang's group who were meditating. It wasn't until this moment that he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surrounded by a layer of restrictions. No one else could attack them. No wonder they dared to sit here and meditate so boldly. Li Buoyo, you are a senior after all. How dare you sneak attack someone from the back? That is too shameless. Wang Yanling looked at Li Buoyo with a gloomy expression. He did not expect Li Buoyo to become more and more despicable in such a short time. Hearing Wang Yanling's words, Li Buoyo's expression turned ugly. Chapter 4068. They killed my brother. It's normal for me to kill them, Li Buoyo said coldly. Hearing that, Wang Yanling sneered, do you think it's okay to pin this groundless title on the heads of our Penglai Palace disciples? Who would believe that? It's up to you to believe it or not. Li Buoyo waved his hand and did not care about Wang Yanling's thoughts. Consider them lucky this time. Anyway, they will die in my hands sooner or later. Li Buoyo, you're too arrogant. Wang Yanling looked at Li Buoyo coldly. They are the disciples of our Penglai Palace. If you dare to attack them, I will not let you off. Li Buoyo snorted, Wang Yanling, I can't be bothered to argue with you now. The most important thing is to obtain the inheritance of the relic. Let's settle our scores after this is over. That's for the best. Wang Yanling did not back down. It's time for us to settle our scores. The temperature suddenly dropped to freezing point. The cultivators of Crimson Moon sect and Penglai Palace confronted each other. Both sides treated each other as enemies. However, in front of the inheritance of the relic, no one had the intention to attack. After all, the inheritance of the relic was the most important thing now. Wang Yanling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest who were sitting at the side. His eyes flashed with a faint doubt. He did not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest would choose to meditate here. At the same time, Li Buoyo led the disciples of Crimson Moon sect and started to try to open the black door. However, no matter how hard they tried, they could not open the black door in the end. Seeing this, Wang Yanling and the rest also went forward to try. The final result was the same. The black door did not budge at all. After realizing this, they stopped their previous actions. Obviously, the black door could not be opened. It must be related to the black door that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest entered such a state. Why are Junior Brother D and the rest meditating here? Could it be that they are thinking of a way to break the black door? A cultivator could not help but guess. The other party would definitely not meditate here for no reason. It must be related to the door. That should be the case. Could it be that he did something wrong and was sealed here by the owner of this ruin? That shouldn't be the case. If they really did something wrong, they would have dissipated. There wouldn't be any power left to protect them. Wang Yanling and Li Boyo were not stupid. At this moment, they naturally understood that Di Beichen and the others were thinking of a way to crack the black door. They immediately studied the surroundings carefully and immediately locked on to the possibility of mental strength. It must be that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other spiritual power was connected to a certain place, so they were meditating here. Soon Wang Yanling and the others realized that the black door was actually a huge puzzle. They had to piece the picture together. Immediately, the group of them sat beside Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and began to piece together this huge puzzle. Not long after, the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate arrived and entered the same state. Chapter 4069. Please enter the text. Time gradually passed. Everyone sat in the same place like old monks in meditation. They did not move at all. Their divine senses had already drifted into the puzzle. During this time, many cultivators chose to give up because they could not make sense of the puzzle. They began to search around, hoping to find other treasures other than the stone chamber. However, after searching for a while, they found that this was a dead end. There was nothing else other than this hall that could not be opened. Seeing this, everyone was a little disappointed. They thought that the other treasures could only be in this hall. If they wanted to obtain the treasures, they had to complete this puzzle. Therefore, everyone had no choice but to continue the puzzle. Ever since Di Beichen entered the puzzle world, he had been observing the pieces of the puzzle. He vaguely felt that there were some connections between them, and there was an inexplicable sense of familiarity and intimacy. Everyone had already begun to try to piece the puzzle together. However, he remained in a state of observation and did not take action. He wanted to first think of the final shape of the puzzle in his mind before piecing it together. After a long time, many pieces intertwined and stuck together in Di Beichen's mind. When it finally turned into a black hole, Di Beichen's gaze changed. He began to move. He quickly pieced the puzzle pieces together. It was as if he already had the original in his mind. Next, he just had to piece them together according to the order. When he finished the last piece of the puzzle, all the puzzle pieces in front of him flashed with a light and turned into a complete picture. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others only felt a special power. They saw a black light surround Di Beichen. Then, Di Beichen's figure disappeared from their sight. Where did Beichen go? Wen Ziran's eyes couldn't help but show a trace of worry. Di Beichen had disappeared into thin air, which really made people worried. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Di Beichen's previous position. Her face flickered with a thoughtful look. Beichen should have already completed the pattern. Perhaps he has already entered the main hall. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Li Boyo and the others couldn't help but be stunned. Their eyes flashed with shock at the same time. They didn't expect Di Beichen's comprehension to be so high. This jigsaw puzzle was so complicated that many people didn't even have a clue. Even if they had a clue, they wouldn't be able to complete it in a short time. However, Di Beichen had already completed it. Li Boyo, Wang Yanling, and Bai Yingtian couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. Before, they only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was the most outstanding in this young team, but now it seemed that Di Beichen was absolutely not to be underestimated. Di Beichen only felt that he was wrapped in a mysterious power. When he saw everything in front of him, he was already in the main hall. Looking at the main hall in front of him, Di Beichen instinctively looked behind him. He found that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not here. The door behind him also made him understand that after successfully piecing together the puzzle, he had indeed entered the main hall. After understanding this point, Di Beichen looked at the main hall in front of him. Chapter 4070. The black mist continued to rise, giving off a mysterious and strange feeling. Di Beichen looked at the black pool with a complicated expression. If he had seen such a pool outside, it would have been extremely strange, but it seemed very normal here. Through the black mist, Di Beichen saw that there was a coffin behind the black pool. He walked towards the coffin behind the black pool. Thinking about it, it was very likely that the coffin belonged to the owner of the ruin. Standing in front of the coffin, Di Beichen stared at the pitch-black but heavy and luxurious coffin, and a trace of respect appeared on his face. Based on what he had seen along the way, he could tell that the owner of the ruin was definitely not an ordinary person. Although this inheritance was different from the ones he had seen before, and he had only seen the treasures he had seen before, and these treasures were all poisonous, he was certain that the owner of the ruin was definitely an expert. From the words of some seniors, he understood how powerful the power of darkness was back then, and it seemed to be very evil, which was why it was surrounded by many forces. In the end, the cultivators who grasped the power of darkness disappeared from this land. Evidently, he could not understand what had happened in the past, but he believed that just like how there were black and white sides to the world, not all cultivators who grasped the power of darkness were bad people. As such, he did not reject the power of darkness. No matter what kind of power it was, as long as it was used properly, it was good. "Greetings, Senior," Di Baichen bowed to the coffin. "I hope you can forgive me for disturbing you." There was no response from the palace, and Di Baichen did not mind at all. After all, he had come to the owner's place, and even if the owner was no longer in this world, he still had to maintain the basic respect. However, just as Di Baichen bowed his head in salute, he suddenly discovered that there was a line of very small words written on the coffin. If he hadn't happened to be here to salute, he was afraid that he would have directly ignored it. However, after seeing the words written on the coffin, Di Baichen was somewhat surprised. "Those who came here, kowtow 3 times. These 8 words were simple and clear, but it was very strange. Inexplicably writing to make people kowtow, the temperament of the owner of this ruin was really different. Perhaps the owner of the ruins used to have a noble status, so he was used to everyone kowtowing to him. Even though Di Baichen was a little puzzled, he still did it out of respect for the other party. The other party might be a senior from hundreds of years ago, so it wasn't really taking advantage of him. After Di Baichen kowtowed 3 times, a message suddenly flashed into his mind, causing him to be stunned. "Young man, you're very good. I like polite young people the most. You have passed my test and can now enter the black pool. As for how much you can gain, that will depend on you." "Senior." "Senior?" After hearing this voice, Di Baichen tried to call out twice, but there was no response. It seems that this senior only left behind a single sentence. Little Xian nodded beside Di Baichen. "Master, the water in this black pool should be a treasure, so let's not waste time, the others might come in at any time." Chapter 4071. Please enter the text. I wonder when Hong Zhuang and the rest will be able to enter. Di Baichen could not help but look at the tightly shut door. Obviously, this door was not meant to be opened at all. Only those who had completed the puzzle were qualified to enter. He could not help Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, so they could only rely on their own efforts. "Mistress is so smart, she will definitely be able to enter soon," Xianzi said with a smile. Hearing this, Di Baichen's eyes also showed a hint of a smile. In terms of perception, Bailey Hongzhuang was very powerful. Since he came to the ruins, he had a very familiar feeling, so his journey was very smooth. Perhaps this ruin was fated to be with him. As Di Baichen walked into the black pool, he felt a strange power surging from the black pool and entering his body. This power was very similar to the dark power they usually felt, but it was somewhat different. The dark power he came into contact with in the past had a gloomy aura, just feeling it made people feel uncomfortable from the bottom of their hearts. However, the power in front of him was also dark power, but it did not have the gloomy and uncomfortable feeling. On the contrary, it actually had a sense of purity. After discovering this, Di Baichen's eyes flashed with a strong sense of surprise. He did not expect there to be such a dark power, it was really amazing. Then, Di Baichen closed his eyes and began to absorb the energy in the black pool. He had already felt that the energy in the black pool was not harmful at all. On the contrary, it was extremely pure and was very helpful to improve his strength. Thinking about it, this should be the most precious thing in the ruins. After Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Di Baichen had successfully entered the main hall, she could not help but feel a little worried. The owner of this ruin had a very strange temper. No one knew what kind of checkpoint he would set next. If everyone was together, at least they could discuss a way to deal with it, but now Di Baichen went in alone. If he was in danger, it would be terrible. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang also sped up the piecing speed, but she did not lose her calm because of worry, because she knew very well that in such a situation, only by calming down could she exert the fastest speed. Li Boyo, Wan Yinling and Bai Yingtian all sped up. Di Baichen had already entered. If they were late, this inheritance might not be with them. After a while, another black light flashed, and then Bailey Hongzhuang's figure disappeared from everyone's sight. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but be stunned again. They did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be the second to enter. Baichen and Hongzhuang are really amazing. They are indeed husband and wife. The first one went in and the second one followed closely behind. Shengguan Yingying's face was full of amazement, and she could not help but feel a little happy. She knew very well that this inheritance would not fall into her hands. If this inheritance was obtained by Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, it would undoubtedly be best. Xiron also smiled and nodded. They are the inheritors of the two great abyss, of course they are powerful. Chapter 4072. When Bailey Hongzhuang entered the hall, she found that there was no one in the hall. Di Beichen was not there at all. She could not help but anxiously call out, "Beichen?" When Di Beichen saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had come, his eyes flashed with surprise and he immediately called out, "Hongzhuang." However, after he called out, he found that Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to see him at all. Seeing this, Di Beichen's eyes flashed with confusion. He could not help but stand up and wanted to go out to find Bailey Hongzhuang. However, after he stood up, he found that he could not walk out of the black pool at all. It was as if there was a force imprisoning him. Could it be that after entering the black pool no one else can see me? Di Beichen murmured. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was as if she could not see his existence. At this moment she was still looking for him. After thinking carefully, Di Beichen also understood. It seemed that this was specially arranged by the owner of the ruins. He did not understand before, but at this moment he understood everything. Only cultivators who respected the owner of the ruins could enter the black pool to absorb the energy. On the contrary, if they did not find the trick, they would not be able to absorb the energy in the black pool. Bailey Hongzhuang called out twice but did not get any response. She could not help but frown in confusion. Why is Beichen not here? Could it be that his speed is so fast that he has passed to the next place? Or, this is another small world. Maybe he is beside me but I can't see him. This kind of method has always been used by the owner of the ruins. After Di Beichen heard Bailey Hongzhuang's muttering, his eyes couldn't help but light up. His wife was really smart, she had thought of this possibility so quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and carefully looked at everything in the hall. It was obviously useless to think about other things now. The most important thing was to find out what was special about this hall. However, after walking around the hall for a while, they didn't find anything special. There was only a black pool in front of them and a coffin behind them. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the black pool. She could feel the energy in the black pool. Must be a great treasure. Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang walking to the side of the black pool and could not help but feel a little worried. Speaking of which, what he did before was just a coincidence. If Bailey Hongzhuang directly tried to enter the black pool, she obviously would not succeed. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to enter the black pool, her gaze once again fell on the coffin behind. I didn't expect the owner of the ruins to put this coffin together with the black pool. It seems that this black pool must be something very important to him. Bailey Hongzhuang muttered to herself. Until the end he still had to look at the black pool. One could imagine how important it was to him. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but walk to the front of the coffin. She bowed and said, "Junior Bailey Hongzhuang greets Senior. This time Senior's ruins have appeared, Junior just happened to come here. If I have disturbed Senior, I hope Senior will forgive me." Di Beichen, who was in the black pool, saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions and could not help but smile. Chapter 4073. After bowing, Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed the small line of words and immediately frowned in confusion. Kowtow 3 times? As Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, she could not help but look at the coffin in front of her. She was extremely astonished. Although the coffin was here and it was not too much to do so, the request of the owner of the ruins was really out of the ordinary. "Master, isn't the personality of the owner of the ruins a little too strange?" Xiaohe looked puzzled. Although the other party was a senior, such a forceful request seemed to be taking advantage of his seniority. Yes, writing such a line of words to remind people to kowtow, this is really a little too much. Xiaobai also could not understand. It was natural to respect one's senior, but such a request was indeed a little too much. Looking at Xiaohe and Xiaobai's expressions of disbelief, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and patted the two little fellows' heads. "Although the request of the owner of the ruins is indeed a little strange, we've come to his place after all, and we're standing in front of his coffin. It's actually not too much. Senior has already passed away as a junior, it's only right for us to pay our respects." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang kowtowed 3 times. She was very impressed that the owner of the ruins could leave such a ruin in this training ground. After kowtowing, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly changed and a strong sense of amazement flashed in her eyes. I didn't expect that entering the black pool would require such a test. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel a little lucky. She only thought that she should at least show some respect since she had come to the owner of the ruins. She did not expect that the key point was here, which was really surprising. Thank you, senior. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed again, then turned and walked towards the black pool. After she walked into the black pool, Di Beichen's figure appeared in front of her. Beichen? Her light and pleasant voice was filled with surprise. I didn't expect you to be here. Di Beichen revealed a joyful smile. Yes, my wife. Then why didn't you call me before? Bailey Hongzhuang was puzzled. Di Beichen smiled faintly. I tried to call out to you, but there's actually a restriction in this black pool. My voice can't pass through it all, so, I see. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. This is my master's test. If you can remind me, then this test will be meaningless. Not bad. Di Beichen nodded. I didn't expect it to be such a test. Fortunately, we succeeded in entering the black pool. This test is actually very simple, but I'm afraid there aren't many cultivators who can discover this point and complete it. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flickered with the light of contemplation. This was actually not a test at all. It was just a test of the cultivator's manners. If he had respect for the owner of the ruins, there would naturally be no problem. On the contrary, if he did not have such thoughts, he would not gain anything even if he turned the entire hall upside down. Chapter 4074. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully sensed the energy in the black pool. Although the pool water was black and gave off a very gloomy feeling, the energy that came into contact with it was extremely pure. It was an extremely rare energy. This kind of energy could be directly absorbed by cultivators. There was almost no need for them to circulate their techniques to refine it. It was truly shocking. Not only that, although the black pool did not seem very large, the energy it contained was extremely shocking. If a cultivator could absorb all the energy in the black pool, it would be extremely terrifying. I never thought that the energy in the black pool would be so pure. It seems that we have to hurry. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile. This kind of opportunity was hard to come by. Although it would take a lot of time to put the puzzle together, it would probably be able to stop a certain number of cultivators from entering. However, it would only be a small part of it. With Wan Yinling and the others' intelligence, they would definitely be able to enter. Hence, the more energy they could absorb, the more they would be able to improve. This was undoubtedly extremely good. Di Beichen nodded. This situation is really suitable for Xiren and the others. It would be great if they could enter earlier. Now that when Xiren and the others were clearly weaker than them, if they could seize this opportunity to improve themselves, they would be able to ascend to the upper realm earlier. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face was filled with emotion. I really hope that their cultivations can quickly improve. Although Shangguan Ying and Xiren had always appeared extremely calm, she knew very well that their strengths were originally about the same. Ever since they had returned from the demonic tower, there had been such a huge gap between their strengths. She believed that when Xiren and the others must have felt a certain gap in their strengths. I believe that they should still be able to enter. Di Beichen's extraordinarily handsome face was filled with a faint smile. His eyes shone with confidence. Although Shangguan Ying was more impatient, based on his understanding of her over the years, he believed that Shangguan Ying and the others would be extremely serious about this matter. With their level of comprehension, as long as they were willing to think about it carefully, they would definitely be able to piece the puzzle together. Then Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't say anything else. Instead, they focused on absorbing the rich and pure energy. Not only that, but little Xian, Xiaohei, Xiaobai and White Lion also entered the black pool. The energy was extremely beneficial to their strength. Shangguan Ying and the others stayed outside. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang disappear, everyone calmed down. At the very least, this proved that not only one cultivator could enter. As long as they worked hard and successfully pieced the puzzle together, they would have the opportunity to receive the inheritance. Shangguan Ying was originally a little impetuous, but after Di Beichen and Li Wuyo disappeared, she couldn't help but calm down. They were a team and no matter what, they didn't want to be separated. At the same time, she didn't want the gap between her and Bailey Hongzhuang to widen. Mo Yunjua's eyes were still closed. Although he could sense everything that was happening around him, he didn't seem to be affected at all. Chapter 4075. However, they did not know if Mo Yunjue would perform as well as before. However, just as Xiren and the others were guessing, Mo Yunjue turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared from their sight. Seeing this, Xiren and the others were stunned. It seemed that their previous judgment was right. Mo Yunjue was also a first-rate cultivation genius. This level of comprehension was not something an ordinary person could compare to. Just as Mo Yunjue disappeared, Li Buyo's figure also disappeared. At the sight of this, the cultivators from the Crimson Moon sect revealed a smile on their faces. Previously, the new disciples of Penglai Palace had stolen the limelight and they were very unhappy. Now that Li Buyo had entered the main hall before Wan Yanling, it had undoubtedly helped them regain some face. However, just as Li Buyo disappeared, Wan Yanling's figure also disappeared. In comparison, the cultivators of Hundred Flowers Gate were still slightly inferior. Next, the cultivators entered the main hall one by one. Bai Yingtian of Hundred Flowers Gate entered right after Wan Yanling. After all, although the pattern was very difficult to piece together, as long as one had enough patience and a bit of comprehension, one could still succeed. If one really did not feel anything about the pattern, one would not be able to succeed. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were cultivating inside, they noticed cultivators appearing one after another in the main hall. Seeing this, the two of them could not help but look at each other. As expected, the other cultivators had also entered after spending some time. Everyone noticed the existence of the black pool the moment they entered. They did not pay any attention to the coffin behind it. The moment Li Buyo saw the black pool, he knew that it must be something good. He immediately wanted to enter the black pool. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen could not help but look at each other. They were also curious. If they did not have the permission of the owner of the ruins, what would happen if they directly entered the black pool? However, just as Li Buyo was about to step into the black pool, there seemed to be an invisible restriction that bounced him back. He was unable to take even half a step forward. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang smirked. She had wanted to enter the black pool when she saw it, but she didn't do so in the end. It turned out that without the permission of the master of the ruins, one simply could not step into this black pool. Li Buyo was clearly stunned by this situation. He immediately extended his hand and tried to enter the black pool again. However, after touching it, he discovered that there was an invisible restriction on the black pool that prevented him from entering. What's going on? Could it be that this black pool can't be entered? Li Buyo couldn't help but frown as a trace of irritation appeared between his brows. He could tell at a glance that the energy in the black pool was a treasure, but it was such a treasure that he could only look at but not consume. This was too unbearable. Mo Yunjue and Wan Yanling also walked to Li Buyo's side. After trying the black pool, they discovered that everything was as expected. Could it be that this black pool can't be entered? Where did Bailey Hongzhuang and the others go? Chapter 4076. As Bai Yingtian's voice fell, the cultivators present also looked at each other. They didn't think of this before, but after Bai Yingtian's reminder, they reacted. Yeah, where did Bailey Hongzhuang and the others go? Could it be that there are other levels after this level, and they have already passed the next level? Bai Yingtian frowned. It was really hard to say what would happen in the ruins. No one knew what would happen in the end. Li Buyo's face was slightly cold. He wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, but he didn't succeed. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already passed the next level, he naturally wouldn't be happy. Since we can't enter this black pool, the problem must be with this coffin. Li Buyo slowly walked towards the coffin. The other cultivators didn't stop near the black pool, but approached the coffin together. After all, there was only this black pool and the coffin in the entire hall. If the black pool didn't have any use, there was only one possibility left. However, after everyone walked near the coffin, they still didn't find anything. Could the problem be in this coffin? Li Buyo's eyes flashed with bright and curious light. The coffin lid had always been closed, so they didn't know what was inside. However, he felt that the owner of the ruin wouldn't really leave his corpse here. Hearing Li Buyo's words, Wan Yanling couldn't help but frown and said, "This should be the owner of the ruin. Since we're here, it's too disrespectful to do this." I don't think so. Maybe the owner of the ruin deliberately put a coffin here to confuse us. Li Buyo obviously didn't care about what Wan Yanling said, and the expression on his face revealed a bit of conceit. This kind of thing is a test of one's ability and courage. I think it's very likely that there's something special here. After hearing Li Buyo's words, the other cultivators' expressions became a little complicated. If there were other mechanisms here, then they would definitely not think about this coffin. However, there was really no other discovery in this hall, so they felt very helpless. Li Buyo, why don't you try? Bai Yingtian raised his eyebrows. Although he also felt that this action was a bit inappropriate, it was still a possibility. Maybe the owner of this ruin had a different way of thinking from ordinary people, so he made this special arrangement. Hearing Bai Yingtian's words, Li Boyo couldn't help but frown. Do you mean to use me as a test subject? It's just that you have a lot of guts, so I'm letting you try. Bai Yingtian shrugged as if saying, it's up to you whether you want to try or not. Compared to the other cultivators who were thinking about the coffin, Mo Yunjue obviously did not have such thoughts. However, he also had some doubts in his heart. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen should be here and wouldn't go anywhere else. But why couldn't he see them here? Ziren and Shengguan Yingying expended a lot of effort to enter the main hall. Chapter 4077. Yunjue, what's the situation now? Why are there so many of them gathered here? When Ziren walked to Mo Yunjue's side with a puzzled look on his face. Where are Beichen and Hongzhuang? Why haven't I seen them? Mo Yunjue shook his head and said, I don't know where they are. I saw this situation as soon as I came in, but I didn't see them. Now, everyone is looking for the inheritance. Hearing this, when Ziren and Shengguan Yingying finally understood. So that's how it is. Shengguan Yingying suddenly understood. Beichen and Hongzhuang are so smart. Maybe they have already found the inheritance of this ruin. In my opinion, Li Boyo and the others are wasting so much effort. It's meaningless. No way? Li Boyo is planning to open the coffin? When Ziren could not help but exclaim in surprise when he heard the discussions of the crowd. A look of astonishment appeared on his face. This is too disrespectful to the owner of this ruin. If this is really the coffin of the owner of this ruin, won't he be angered to death? When Ziren only felt that it was inconceivable. Normal people would not do such a rude thing. Most ruins were built according to the owner's dying wish to continue their inheritance. Therefore, it was very likely that the body of the owner of this ruin was here. Usually, cultivators would be in awe here. How could anyone go so far? I also think that this Li Boyo is too daring. The things he does are somewhat incomprehensible. Shengguan Yingying frowned. She had long found Li Boyo an eyesore. Previously, he even wanted to kill them. If it were not for the fact that their team's strength was not as good as Li Boyo's, she really wanted to send this guy to heaven. Let's not associate ourselves with them. Mo Yunjue slowly said, whether the body of the owner of this ruin is here or not, as long as he knows about this, he will be very angry. According to Mo Yunjue's understanding, even if the owner of this ruin had passed away, he would often leave a remnant soul in this ruin. If someone did something he didn't like, he wouldn't let them off easily. Shengguan Yingying and Wen Ziren both nodded. In my opinion, we should apologize to the owner of the ruins first. If these people go too far and implicate us, it won't be good. All right. When Ziren and Mo Yunjue both agreed. They had come here to obtain the inheritance of the master of the ruins and increase their strength. They did not want to humiliate the master of the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had been paying attention to the situation in the hall. Especially after hearing the conversation between Shengguan Yingying and the others, they couldn't help but smile. If it wasn't for Li Boyo's exaggerated actions, perhaps Shengguan Yingying and the other two wouldn't have such an idea. However, once they did so, then they would be able to enter the black pool, which was really good news. Looks like we have to thank Li Boyo for this. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Originally, she thought that their team was the weakest among the 4 teams. She didn't expect them to gain so much. Sure enough, after Shengguan Yingying and the others bowed to the master of the ruins, they disappeared from everyone's sight. Chapter 4078. It turned out that after the cultivator bowed to the owner of the ruins, they would disappear from the sight of others. This way, others would not understand how they disappeared. Mo Yunjue and the other two reacted just like Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen before. After knowing the owner of the ruins' request, they were very confused. However, in the end they still did as he said. When they turned around, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen in the black pool. Their faces were immediately filled with shock. As they walked into the black pool, Bailey Hongzhuang said in surprise, "You guys are in too. What's going on? I didn't see you guys in the black pool before." Shengguan Yingying was a little dumbfounded. Why was the scene completely different from before after she followed the owner of the ruins' instructions? This is the owner of the ruins' camouflage. Right now we can see outside, but the people outside can't see us because there's a restriction in the black pool. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue and the other two finally understood. Their faces were filled with realization. So that's how it is. Mo Yunju sighed, I didn't expect that the key to breaking the restriction would be here. Everyone, let's stop chatting. This is a rare opportunity. Let's hurry up and absorb this energy. Bailey Hongzhuang reminded everyone. No one knew how long they could stay in the black pool. What they could do now was to hurry up and absorb as much energy as they could. After hesitating for a long time, Li Boyo finally decided to try opening the coffin. Just wait and see. The treasure must be in the coffin. In the next moment, as Li Boyo stretched out his hand to open the coffin, a powerful force suddenly exploded from the coffin. Li Boyo only felt himself being attacked by a powerful force. Then his entire body flew out and crashed into the wall. His internal organs felt as if they had been crushed. A mouthful of blood uncontrollably spurted out from Li Boyo's mouth. His face instantly turned pale and his aura withered. This scene happened so suddenly that everyone present could not help but be stunned. However, even though they had already guessed that Li Boyo's actions were a little too much and that he might be punished by the owner of the ruins, the punishment came so quickly and so shockingly. It was beyond their expectations. Senior Li. The cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect all rushed to Li Boyo's side. The scene was really shocking. They did not expect the punishment to be so severe. Everyone tried to help Li Boyo up, but Li Boyo seemed as if he had no strength. His face turned pale and he could not stop spurting out blood. Senior Brother Li, how are you? The disciples asked with concern. Their faces were filled with worry. However, Li Boyo was not in the mood to reply to the crowd. His eyes were wide open as if something unbelievable had happened. Senior Li, what's wrong? The cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect asked one after another. They were completely clueless as to what the problem was. At the same time, Wang Yinling and Bai Yingtian arrived beside Li Boyo. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. Chapter 4079. Impossible. Li Boyo shook his head with a pale face. It's absolutely impossible. It's impossible for something like this to happen. I must have made a mistake. When everyone saw that Li Boyo was only muttering to himself and ignoring their questions, they couldn't help but feel puzzled. Senior Brother Li, what exactly happened? What are you talking about? Everyone asked one after another, but Li Boyo's face remained pale and he was unwilling to answer. His expression was one of someone who had suffered a huge blow. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, completely clueless as to where the problem came from. It's impossible. It wasn't easy for me to cultivate to this level. How could my Dantian be destroyed? Li Boyo shouted crazily. This matter was too big a blow for him. He could not accept it at all. It was just a single attack. With his current strength, he could not even block an attack that was placed on the coffin. Everyone who was still a little doubtful was stunned after hearing Li Boyo's words. They couldn't help but widen their eyes, and a look of shock appeared on their faces. Senior Brother Li, what did you say? Your cultivation has been destroyed? The cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect could not believe it. Li Boyo was a cultivator who had reached the 5th level of the Starlight Realm. Even in the entire Penglai Island, there were not many people who could be his opponent. However, just a single attack from the coffin was enough to destroy his Dantian. Just how powerful was the attack? How terrifying was the strength of the owner of the ruins? It's too terrifying. The cultivators present sighed one after another. Such a punishment was simply unacceptable to cultivators. Wang Yinling and Bai Yingtian could not help but look at each other. They had already felt that Li Boyo's actions were a little too much. However, the punishment from the owner of the ruins was too severe. This was equivalent to directly cutting off Li Boyo's path of survival. 4 cultivators of their level, they had spent so much effort to get to where they were today with great difficulty. However, with just one move they had become crippled. Such a blow was even harder to accept than if they were told to die. Bai Yingtian could not help but feel a little lucky. Fortunately, he did not listen to Li Yunyu and try to do all this. Otherwise, he would be the one in a tragedy now. After seeing Li Boyo's change, everyone was silent for a moment. The cultivators of Penglai Palace and 100 Flowers Gate naturally would not be affected by Li Boyo's situation. This kind of thing could be said to be happy to see. However, through this incident, they also understood the temper and strength of the owner of the ruins. This coffin could be said to be sacred and inviolable. This way we don't have to worry. Revenge. Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction, Mo Yunju said indifferently. Chapter 4080. For Li Boyo, this kind of blow is probably worse than taking his life, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Who cares? Anyway, I'm very happy to see him end up like this. Shengguan Yingying looked proud. Li Boyo is just like his younger brother, Li Yunyu. They're both so annoying. Don't worry about them. Let's focus on cultivating now. Di Baichen reminded everyone. Although there were only a few cultivators in the palace who could discover this, there might still be some cultivators who would discover this opportunity. Moreover, after the incident with Li Boyo, everyone would definitely respect the owner of the ruins more. Therefore, the possibility of discovering this would also increase. Immediately, everyone stopped paying attention to the situation outside. They had to grasp this opportunity well. After the incident with Li Boyo, the other cultivators no longer dared to have any thoughts about the coffin. Thinking about it, as long as they approached the coffin they would be attacked. No one dared to try it again. Right, where are the 3 newcomers from Penglai Palace who were here just now? After the cultivator from 100 Flowers Gate looked around, he suddenly realized that Mo Yunjue and the other 2 had disappeared. As the cultivator's voice fell, everyone present could not help but look around. They realized that the 3 of them were indeed nowhere to be seen. That's not right. They were clearly with us before. How could they suddenly disappear? I didn't remember wrongly, right? A cultivator was also somewhat confused. Could it be that he was hallucinating before? Or did the 3 of them not enter the palace at all? You didn't remember wrongly. The 3 of them were indeed here before. Another cultivator confirmed his answer. Then when did they disappear? I don't know. Everyone was at a loss. Previously, everyone's attention was on Li Boyo. No one paid attention to Mo Yunjue and the other 2. Because in their eyes the 3 of them were the weakest. There was no need to pay attention to them at all. If a cultivator had not mentioned this point they probably would not have noticed at all. Wang Yinling, your Penglai Palace team is a bit strange. Bai Yingtian looked at Wang Yinling with doubt in his eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen are also gone. Do you know where they are? Everyone else was here, but Bailey Hongzhuang's team was missing. This was too strange. Hearing Bai Yingtian's question, Wang Yinling's expression was a bit complicated. He didn't understand this either. There was clearly no way out of this hall. They had already tried, but the door could not be opened at all. Moreover, if they left just like that, no one would be able to ignore such a huge commotion. Then where did this group of people run off to? I don't know either, Wang Yinling said helplessly. Previously he had already heard that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not ordinary people. Now, after this trip to the ruins he really felt that they were not simple. Chapter 4081. However, Bai Yingtian did not believe Wang Yinling's answer. No way. Bai Yingtian raised his eyebrows. Disbelief was written all over his face. The 3 of them are disciples of Penglai Palace. You are the strongest person in Penglai Palace. How could you not know? The cultivators of 100 Flower Gate and Crimson Moon Sect all looked at Wang Yinling. The only people who might know the truth were the cultivators of Penglai Palace. Feeling everyone's gaze, the cultivators of Penglai Palace felt helpless. No one believed it, but they really did not know what was going on. Just like the cultivators of 100 Flower Gate and Crimson Moon Sect, they did not pay much attention to Mo Yunjue and the others. It was just that in such a short time, no one could figure out how they disappeared. Most importantly, in front of everyone's gaze, it would be embarrassing if they said they did not know. Believe it or not. Wang Yinling's expression was a little ugly. If I really knew, wouldn't I have left with them long ago? Why would I stay here with you? Hearing Wang Yinling's words, Bai Yingtian and the others could not help but look at each other. What he said made sense. From the looks of it, even you don't know. Bai Yingtian sighed. I didn't expect these young people to have such high comprehension. We still haven't found where the opportunity is, but they found it. For a moment, everyone sighed in their hearts. They had heard that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were very powerful, but after seeing it for themselves, they realized that their comprehension was terrifying. Not long after, Ren Zimei and the others also entered the hall. After entering the hall, they found that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not there. They could not help but feel confused. Senior brother Wang Yin, have you seen junior sister Bailey and the others? Ren Ziheng walked to Wang Yinling and asked. Hearing this, Wang Yinling shook his head and said, we didn't see them when we came in. What about junior brother Wen and the others? Ren Zimei asked. They came in after you. Wang Yinling looked a little helpless. Just now when we were all looking around, we didn't know how they left this hall. We are also looking for a way now. Hearing this, Renzime and the others couldn't help but look at each other, their eyes flashing with disbelief. Why was it so hard to believe what he said? However, since Wang Yinling said so, no matter how much they doubted, it was useless. They could only reluctantly nod and pretend to believe his words. Wang Yinling naturally knew that Renzime and the others had doubts about his answer, but in reality, everything he said was the truth. Since the other party didn't believe him, there was nothing he could do. He could only sulk in his heart. As time passed, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others concentrated on absorbing the energy in the black pool. The energy in the black pool was extremely large, but their absorption speed was not slow either. As they absorbed the energy, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying actually felt the opportunity to break through again. After discovering this, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were pleasantly surprised. Chapter 4082. The energy in this black pool is too powerful. When Xiren's eyes shone brightly. If we have the chance to stay here for a few more days, we might be able to increase our strength even more. At their level, it was extremely difficult for them to increase their cultivation quickly because the amount of energy required was too much. Even with the help of spiritual stones, it would take a lot of time to cultivate. However, the energy in this black pool was not only abundant, but it also did not need to be refined. Hence, it greatly increased the speed of cultivation. Yes, this is the most precious treasure in this relic. Di Beichen smiled faintly. It's best if we can use this opportunity to increase our strength as soon as possible. If possible, he also hoped to enter the upper realm as soon as possible. He wanted to know if he was really a descendant of the Di family who had wandered outside. According to what Ao Ling Xiao had said, the possibility of this was extremely high. Ever since he knew that he might not have been abandoned by his parents, his mood had improved a lot. He did not mind that he had wandered outside for so many years because his master had never wronged him. Instead, his master had always treated him as his grandson. If his family had been searching for his whereabouts all these years, it would be a kind of comfort to him. When Xiren nodded. Of course. Just as they were talking, Wang Yinling's figure suddenly appeared in the black pool. Noticing Wang Yinling's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. However, they quickly regained their composure. In fact, they knew that with Wang Yinling's strength, it was very likely that he had discovered this place. Hence, although they were a little surprised, they did not find it strange. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the black pool, Wang Yinling's eyes flashed with intense surprise. I was wondering where you guys had gone before. It turns out that you guys were in this black pool. Wang Yinling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in surprise. He did not expect that this was a trick that had actually bewitched all of them. Listening to Wang Yinling's words, a smile appeared on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. So, it seems that you all have been looking at me as a joke? Wang Yinling raised his eyebrows. Previously, when he was questioned by everyone outside, it wasn't an ordinary embarrassment. Senior brother Wang Yin, we don't have the intention to laugh at you. Di Beichen said slowly, it's just that there's a restriction on this black pool. Our voices can't reach the outside at all, so even if we wanted to warn you, it's useless. Hearing this, Wang Yinling understood. I see. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were cultivating in the black pool, the other cultivators were also staying in the hall. Not only were they unable to find the mechanism to enter the next step, they couldn't even get out. For a time, everyone was extremely vexed. Suddenly, a cultivator from the Crimson Moon sect fell to the ground with a pained look on his face. Seeing this, everyone could not help but be stunned. Qin Shuang, what happened to you? Li Boyo looked at the cultivator in the group and asked. Chapter 4083. Ever since Li Boyo's Dantian was destroyed, he had become extremely dispirited. However, he knew that he was once the most outstanding cultivator in the Crimson Moon sect. As the leader of the team, he could not just collapse like this. At the very least, he could not let Wang Yinling see him as a joke. Therefore, he forced himself to act as if nothing had happened. Just as this cultivator revealed a pained expression, another cultivator from the Crimson Moon sect also collapsed. 7 cultivators fell one after another before the situation came to a stop. When the crowd saw the appearance of these 7 people, their eyes were filled with shock. They had no idea what had happened. Why did it suddenly become like this? Li Boyo, based on their behavior, they seemed to have been poisoned, Buying Tian could not help but say. Their lips were purple and they looked like they were in pain. This was the most obvious sign of being poisoned. Li Buyo obviously noticed this too. He could not help but frown. Who could have poisoned them? Bai Yingtian could not help but look at the cultivators in his team and ask, "How do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" The cultivators from the 100 Flowers Gate looked at each other and shook their heads. "We don't seem to be. Bai Yingtian, you are all doctors. Come and help see what's wrong with them," Li Buyo could not help but say. Hearing this, Bai Yingtian slowly walked in front of Qin Shuang and took his pulse. "How is it?" Li Buyo asked after Bai Yingtian withdrew his hand. "He has been poisoned. I'm afraid he won't survive," Bai Yingtian said with a heavy expression. "Bai Yingtian, although we're usually competitors, we're still friends," Bai Yingtian said. "Now that all of us are trapped here, don't leave us in the lurch." Li Buyo frowned. Now that his strength was completely crippled, the entire Crimson Moon sect's combat power had greatly decreased. If they lost 7 more cultivators, their team's situation would be really bad. Bai Yingtian shook his head. "It's not that I don't want to help you, but this poison is really too difficult to cure. With my strength, there is no way to cure it. I don't understand where you got this poison." Along the way, they had not encountered anything that was poisoned. Moreover, if it was from the skeletons, it wouldn't have only been triggered by the 7 cultivators, right? "Are you telling the truth?" Li Buyo asked again. "At a time like this, I have no reason to lie to you." Bai Yingtian's expression was certain. "Although we are usually competitors, the 100 Flowers Gate's duty is to save people. As long as you are willing to pay the price, we will agree to save you. Why would we refuse?" Hearing Bai Yingtian's words, Li Buyo understood that there was no way to cure this poison. Bai Yingtian's eyes, Bai Yingtian, and Yingtian. Shengguan Yingying's eyes shone with relief. "Hongzhuang, we're lucky to have you by our side to warn us. Otherwise, we'd be the ones who'd fall into the trap." Before, when Bailey Hongzhuang said that those treasures were poisonous, she was somewhat unwilling to believe it because it was really too much of a pity. Chapter 4084. That's right. I didn't expect those treasures to be poisoned. Fortunately, Hongzhuang was by our side. Otherwise, we would have all been poisoned. Xiren could not help but sigh. In the face of so many treasures, most people would not be able to control themselves and would want to take them. If it were not for Hongzhuang's reminder and their trust in Hongzhuang, many people would not have cared at all. In fact, they had expected that Li Buyo and the others would be poisoned. Originally, they thought that everyone in Li Buyo's group would be poisoned. However, they did not expect that only 7 people would be poisoned. This loss was considered relatively small. After hearing their conversation, Wan Yanling could not help but reveal a puzzled expression. "What do you mean by this? Senior brother Wan Yan, don't you know?" Shengguan Yingying asked curiously. Wan Yanling shook his head. "I don't know what you are talking about." Hearing Wan Yanling's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but look at each other. They understood in their hearts. They did not expect the cultivators of Crimson Moon sect to be so fast. They had already collected all the treasures before Wan Yanling and the others arrived. However, this was also a good thing. If they had not been fast enough, the cultivators of Penglai Palace would have been poisoned. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others explained the process of the matter, Wan Yanling finally understood. He could not help but feel a lingering fear in his heart. It was really fortunate that the cultivators of Crimson Moon sect had arrived before them. Otherwise, this situation would have fallen on their heads. "I didn't expect such a thing to happen. I'm afraid no one can resist such a temptation." Wan Yanling's gaze could not help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were outstanding enough to discover that those treasures had been poisoned. For a moment, Li Buyo did not realize when the cultivators in the group had been poisoned. After thinking carefully, Qin Shuang said, "Senior brother Li, those treasures must have been poisoned." Ever since they entered the ruins, they had not encountered many situations, not to mention that everyone had faced it together. Logically speaking, it was impossible for only a portion of the people to be poisoned. After eliminating the possibility, the only possibility left was when everyone else had left. They were the only ones who had collected the treasures. Listening to Qin Shuang's words, Li Buyo reacted. After taking a closer look at the poisoned cultivators, he realized that only the cultivators who stayed there to collect treasures were poisoned. It was no wonder that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had left these treasures behind. It was likely that they had already discovered the peculiarity of these treasures. Back then, although he vaguely felt that something was wrong with the situation, He still couldn't figure out what the problem was. It turned out that this was the biggest problem. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others are too despicable. Li Buyo's face was filled with anger. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they would not have fallen into such a situation. The other party had obviously dug a trap and waited for them to jump into it. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the black pool heard Li Buyo's abuse, their faces were filled with displeasure. This Li Buyo is really too much. This matter clearly has nothing to do with us. If it weren't for their greed, how could they have been poisoned? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.